Every afternoon at exactly 4:30, Daniel Mercer stopped working, gathered the cleanest pieces of scrap lumber from the discard pile, and loaded them into the bed of his faded Ford pickup. He never asked permission to leave early because his shift was over. He never asked for money, and when the foreman offered him $20 to stay another hour that Thursday, Daniel simply shook his head. "Can't. My daughter's waiting." A few men laughed. One muttered that a man behind on bills ought to have different priorities. Daniel heard him. He kept tying down the lumber. Across the job site, Claire Bennett heard it too. She had been overseeing the renovation for her family's property company for 3 weeks, and Daniel was the one carpenter she could never quite understand. He wore the same scuffed work boots every day, brought coffee from home in an old steel thermos, and drove a truck with a cracked dashboard. Yet whenever another carpenter measured twice, Daniel seemed to measure once and get it right. That morning, he had quietly corrected a staircase stringer before anyone noticed the framing plan itself was wrong. When Claire asked how he caught it, he only said, "It wouldn't have carried the load right." Then he went back to work. At 4:22, Daniel's phone buzzed. A picture appeared on the screen. A 10-year-old girl standing in a school hallway beside a cardboard model of a house. Under it were 5 words. "Dad, I saved you a seat." Daniel smiled in a way Claire had never seen at work. 8 minutes later, he was gone. What Claire did not know was that his daughter, Lily, had been sitting alone beside that model for nearly 20 minutes. Parents passed carrying grocery bags, work laptops, and younger children. Lily kept glancing toward the glass doors. When Daniel finally hurried inside, sawdust still clinging to his sleeves, her whole face changed. "You made it." He crouched beside her display. "Told you I would." The model leaned badly to one side. Daniel studied it seriously, as though inspecting a $1 million house. Then he pointed to one tiny support beneath the roof. "That right there is doing more work than anybody can see." Lily grinned. "Like you." Daniel paused. "Something like that." On the way home, they stopped at a grocery store where Daniel counted bills twice before putting a carton of orange juice back on the shelf. At their mailbox, a red-stamped utility notice waited between supermarket flyers. He folded it before Lily could read it. She noticed anyway. "We okay, Dad? We're okay tonight." He said it calmly, and that seemed enough for her. The next morning, Claire watched Daniel repair a warped cabinet frame another crew had marked for replacement. 20 minutes later, the old frame sat square and solid. "Why aren't you running your own crew?" she asked. Daniel wiped the pencil mark from behind his ear. Life went another direction. Before Claire could press him, the foreman approached with news of a better-paying Finnish carpentry assignment starting Monday. Daniel's expression lifted until he heard the hours. 6 in the morning until 7 at night. "I can't do 7, he said. The foreman shrugged. "Then I need somebody who wants it more." Daniel nodded once. "No argument. No embarrassment." He simply returned to his saw. But Claire looked toward the scrap pile, then toward Daniel's battered pickup. A man that skilled was turning down the money he clearly needed, leaving on the minute every afternoon, and carrying discarded wood home like it mattered. That evening, when Daniel's truck pulled onto the county road with another bundle tied across the bed, Claire made a choice she normally would have considered unforgivable. She stayed 3 car lengths behind him. 20 minutes later, Daniel turned away from town, away from the nicer subdivisions, and down a narrow road Claire had never taken. When his brake lights disappeared behind a row of aging trailers, she slowed. Then she saw him unload the lumber, and saw a small girl waiting for him with a tape measure already in her hands. Claire stopped 50 yards from the trailer and killed her headlights. She told herself she only wanted to understand. Then Lily lifted one end of a narrow board while Daniel carried the other, and curiosity gave way to something quieter. They were building a desk beneath the trailer's front window. Not buying one, building it. Daniel checked the floor with a small level, shaved a warped edge with a hand plane, then showed Lily how to hold the square against the corner. "Straight enough?" she asked. "Straight isn't something you guess," he said gently. "You check." Lily nodded as if this were about more than wood. The next morning, Claire said nothing about following him. Daniel said nothing about being followed. But at lunch, a delivery driver backed a pallet of cabinet doors toward the wrong loading area. One wheel dropped into a soft trench, tilting the load dangerously toward a parked truck. Men shouted conflicting instructions. Daniel set down his sandwich, walked over, and studied the angle. "Don't pull forward," he said. "You'll bury the axle." The driver hesitated. The foreman barked. "Let him handle his own truck, Mercer." Daniel stepped back without arguing. The driver tried forward anyway. The tire spun deeper. Claire watched Daniel glance at 2 scrap planks, then at the slope. "What would you do?" she asked. He pointed. "Bridge the rut, unload the top row, then back out slow." 10 minutes later, that was exactly what worked. The foreman thanked the driver for getting himself free. Daniel had already returned to his sandwich. That afternoon, Lily appeared at the site gate carrying Daniel's forgotten thermos. Claire walked her inside. "Your dad fixes everything, doesn't he?" Lily smiled. "Mostly things people say aren't worth fixing." Daniel came over, clearly uncomfortable seeing his daughter near the active work area. He thanked Claire, checked Lily's bicycle helmet strap, and handed her $5 from his wallet. "Milk and eggs. Nothing extra." Lily lowered her voice. "I found another envelope in the mailbox." Daniel's face changed for half a second. "Put it on the table." "I'll handle it." The foreman passed behind them and shook his head. "Mercer, maybe if you spent less time playing family man, you'd stop missing chances." Daniel looked at Lily before answering. "She's not something I miss chances because of." He walked her safely to the sidewalk and watched until she pedaled away. Later, Claire found him repairing a damaged oak door scheduled for the dumpster. He worked without a blueprint, rebuilding a split mortise so cleanly the repair vanished beneath the grain. Claire ran her fingers over the joint. "Where did you learn that?" Daniel packed his tools. "A long time ago. Cabinet shop? Something like that." He left before she could ask more. Claire turned the door over. On the underside, hidden from ordinary view, Daniel had penciled 3 tiny letters beside his measurements. DMM. The project superintendent saw them and suddenly stopped. "Where did this come from?" Claire asked. The older man stared at the initials, then at Daniel's departing truck. "I haven't seen work marked that way in 15 years, he said quietly. And for the first time, Claire understood that Daniel Mercer had not simply learned carpentry somewhere. Someone here might already know exactly who he had once been. The superintendent kept his eyes on the road until Daniel's truck disappeared beyond the gate. "You know those initials?" Claire asked. He rubbed a thumb across the repaired oak. "I know the hand." Before he could say more, the foreman called everyone back to work, and the moment closed. The next morning brought a bigger problem. A custom walnut staircase arrived with one landing section cut nearly an inch short. Reordering it would delay the project by 10 days and cost thousands. The foreman blamed the supplier. The supplier blamed the measurements. Voices rose across the unfinished foyer. Daniel stood off to the side, studying the framing. "Mercer," the foreman snapped, "unless you've got a miracle in that tool belt, stay out of it." Daniel said nothing. Claire looked at him. "Can it be saved?" He crouched beside the landing, checked the grain, then measured the opening. "Yes." The foreman laughed. "With what?" "Wishful thinking." Daniel pointed to 2 unused walnut panels stacked near the wall. "Matched grain. Same mill. We can sister the landing, rebuild the nosing, and hide the joint under the return." The superintendent watched him carefully. "How long?" 3 hours if nobody rushes it." Claire made the call. "Do it." The foreman's jaw tightened. "You're trusting a day labor carpenter with a custom staircase?" Daniel looked at Claire before answering. "If she wants somebody else, that's fine. No prive. No challenge. Just certainty." 3 hours later, the landing fit so cleanly that even the supplier's representative could not find the repair until Daniel showed him where it was. Claire expected him to enjoy the moment. Instead, Daniel cleaned his bench, checked the time, and reached for his keys. "You're leaving now?" the foreman demanded. We're finally ahead. Lily has parent-teacher night. Again with the schedule. Daniel's expression stayed calm. Yes, again. That evening, Claire happened to be at the elementary school delivering donated art supplies when she saw Lily guiding Daniel through a hallway lined with construction paper projects. Lily spotted Claire first. Dad fixed something today, didn't he? Daniel glanced at her. How would you know? You have the good sawdust on your boots. Claire laughed despite herself. Lily turned serious. He used to make things people kept. Daniel gently touched her shoulder. Come on, kiddo. But Claire heard it. Used to. Lily nodded before Daniel could stop her. There's a picture in our closet of Dad standing in front of this huge wooden house. Everybody had matching shirts, and his name was on the sign. Daniel's face softened, but his eyes closed the door. Old job. Later, back at the site, the superintendent found Claire examining the repaired staircase. He didn't tell you, did he? Tell me what? The older man looked toward Daniel's empty station. 15 years ago, builders around 3 counties competed to hire whoever trained under DMM. Claire stared at him. Daniel trained under someone? The superintendent shook his head. No, he tapped the flawless walnut joint. Daniel was DMM. Claire found Daniel the next morning trimming a cedar panel beside the loading dock. She did not mention DMM right away. Instead, she watched him stop a young apprentice from forcing a warped board into place. Daniel loosened the clamps, turned the piece over, and showed him how the grain was pulling against the frame. Wood tells you when you're asking too much of it, he said. People do too. The apprentice tried again, slower this time, and the panel settled cleanly. Daniel handed back the tools and walked away before anyone could thank him. Claire followed. You used to run Mercer Millwork? Daniel's hands stopped for half a second. That was a long time ago. The superintendent said builders competed for your crews. He remembers generously. Why did you walk away? Daniel looked toward the clock mounted above the site office. I didn't say I walked away. Then he returned to work. The answer stayed with Claire all morning. Around noon, a shipment of custom cabinets arrived with a structural problem hidden behind the face frames. The foreman wanted them installed anyway. Inspection won't catch it, he said. Daniel ran his fingers along one back rail. A kid pulling on that upper door could. The foreman frowned. We don't have time to rebuild 6 cabinets. Daniel quietly set down his drill. Then don't put my name on them. For the first time, the superintendent backed him publicly. Mercer's right. Fix them. The foreman stared at Daniel with open resentment, but the work stopped. Daniel rebuilt the weak rails using leftover maple strips, saving the cabinets without delaying the entire floor. Claire watched him work with the same patience he used with Lily's school project. That afternoon, Lily arrived carrying 2 peanut butter sandwiches in a brown paper bag. You forgot lunch again, she told him. Daniel smiled. I was busy. She handed the second sandwich to Claire. I made extra. The 3 of them sat on the tailgate of Daniel's pickup. Lily talked about a reading contest at school and a shelf she wanted for her library books. Dad says we can build it Saturday if the power stays on. Daniel looked at her gently. The power's staying on. Claire noticed the utility company envelope tucked beneath the truck's registration papers near the cup holder. Daniel noticed her noticing and closed the compartment without shame or explanation. Later, Claire approached him with a small set of drawings for a difficult built-in bench planned for the lobby. I want your opinion. Daniel studied the pages. You want the company's opinion or mine? Yours. He marked 3 changes that would strengthen the frame, reduce waste, and preserve the original design. Claire realized he was not merely skilled with tools. He understood the whole structure before anyone else saw the problem. When she thanked him, Daniel simply folded the drawings and handed them back. That evening, the superintendent caught Claire near the trailers. Be careful asking about his old company, he said. Why? The older man hesitated. Because Mercer Millwork didn't fail. Claire looked toward Daniel's truck. Then what happened? The superintendent lowered his voice. Ask him what he gave up the year Lily came home. At that exact moment, Daniel stepped from the trailer carrying an old wooden sign. Claire could still make out the faded words beneath the dust. Mercer Millwork. Built to last. Daniel stared at it for a long moment, then carried it toward the fire barrel. Daniel did not burn the old sign. He stood beside the barrel until Lily came outside, saw what he was holding, and quietly took it from his hands. You said good wood shouldn't be wasted, she told him. Daniel looked at her, then at Claire, who had stopped near the gravel drive. After a moment, he carried the sign back inside. That Saturday, Claire returned with the lobby bench drawings and found father and daughter working beneath the trailer awning. Lily held the tape while Daniel cut salvaged oak into narrow strips. The little shelf she wanted for her books was already taking shape against the wall. He lets me mark the cuts, Lily said proudly. But he checks them because I rush. Daniel smiled. Everybody rushes until something matters. Claire spread the lobby plans across the tailgate. The design team rejected your changes. Daniel studied the stamped revision. Why? They say the original is faster. He looked at the load points again, then asked Lily for her pencil. Instead of arguing, he redrew the support pattern, reduced 2 unnecessary pieces, and showed Claire how the bench could carry more weight with less material. On Monday, the revised section was built exactly that way. By noon, the superintendent had 3 carpenters gathered around Daniel while he laid out the curved frame. Even the supplier representative admitted the new plan saved nearly a full sheet of hardwood per unit. Daniel gave instructions without raising his voice, handed the best tasks to younger workers, and fixed mistakes before they became embarrassments. Nobody laughed when he spoke anymore. Nobody except the foreman looked pleased about that. You're not management, he reminded Daniel after lunch. Daniel handed him the revised cut list. Then take the credit. The foreman stared at him. You think that makes you noble? No. It makes the bench finished. Claire heard every word. Later, she found Lily in the job site office coloring on scrap paper while waiting for Daniel's shift to end. On the page was a drawing of 3 people sitting at a wooden table. Claire pointed gently. Who's that? Lily shrugged, suddenly shy. Just somebody who stays. Then she folded the picture before Claire could ask anything else. The warmth of that small answer followed Claire until she saw the first warning. Daniel's name had been removed from the next week's specialty work schedule. The second warning came minutes later when she overheard the foreman telling the superintendent that Daniel was becoming a liability because clients were asking for him by name. That evening, Claire stopped Daniel beside his pickup. Someone's trying to push you off the project. Daniel tightened the strap over his lumber. Wouldn't be the first time. What does that mean? He did not answer. Instead, Lily came running from the trailer holding an old manila envelope she had found behind the saved Mercer Millwork sign. Dad, this has your company name on it. Daniel's face went still. Claire saw one line through the open flap before he closed it. Transfer of ownership. Daniel took the envelope gently from Lily. This isn't for tonight. But the superintendent, standing several feet away, had already seen it too. He looked at Daniel with something close to grief. You kept that. Daniel nodded once, and Claire understood that whatever he had surrendered years ago had not been taken from him by failure. He had signed it away. The next morning, Claire arrived before sunrise and found Daniel already checking the lobby framing with a flashlight. Overnight humidity had opened a hairline gap along one of the new support joints. Most people would have missed it. Daniel did not. He traced the problem back to a load calculation copied incorrectly from an earlier drawing. If the benches were installed as planned, the finished wall could shift under weight and force the entire lobby section to be reopened. How bad? Claire asked. Daniel showed her the numbers. Bad enough to fix now. Cheap enough if we do it before drywall. Claire called the superintendent. Within 20 minutes, the crew had stopped installation. The foreman protested immediately. We're losing half a day over a pencil mark. Daniel answered calmly. We lose half a day now or 2 weeks later. Claire looked at the superintendent. Follow Daniel's correction. This time, nobody argued except the foreman. Daniel reorganized the crew, reused material already on site, and corrected the framing before lunch. The change saved the project from a costly inspection failure and protected workers from having to tear out finished construction later. By afternoon, the property company's regional manager had arrived. He shook Daniel's hand in front of everyone. Claire says you caught this before it became a six-figure problem. Daniel glanced toward the crew. A lot of people fixed it. You found it. Daniel said nothing. The manager handed Claire a folder. We need someone to lead the Finnish team for the next phase. Temporary supervisor, better pay, steady hours. The foreman's expression hardened. Claire did not look at him. She looked at Daniel. 6 to 4:30, she said. Daniel's eyes changed. Every day. He asked one question. No surprise nights. Not unless you agree first. Daniel took the folder. Then I can do the job. That evening, Lily met him beside the pickup with an overdue utility bill in one hand and a grocery store flyer in the other. Daniel crouched in front of her. We're caught up by Friday. She blinked. Really? Lily threw her arms around his neck, then reached for Claire, who had followed with paperwork Daniel needed to sign. For one awkward second, all three stood together beside the truck. Then Lily pulled back and grinned. Does this mean we can buy orange juice again? Daniel laughed. The fancy kind with pulp. It was the first time Claire had heard him laugh without restraint. One mystery had finally begun to make sense. Daniel was not refusing opportunity. He was refusing any opportunity that required him to disappear from Lily's life. But another question had grown larger. If he had once owned a respected company, why had he signed it away instead of using it to protect them? Back at the site office, the answer seemed closer than ever. The superintendent quietly placed a copy of the old ownership transfer in Claire's desk drawer. Before she could read it, the foreman appeared in the doorway. Congratulations on your new supervisor, he said. His smile was thin. Later that night, after everyone left, he returned alone, opened the scheduling system, and changed Daniel's first major assignment from a daytime installation to a mandatory evening delivery inspection. On Claire's desk, beneath the transfer papers, he left a printed notice stating one condition in bold. Failure to attend will result in immediate removal from supervisory duties. Daniel saw the revised schedule at 6:10 Monday morning. He read the evening inspection line twice, then looked at the printed warning beneath it. That wasn't the agreement, he said. The foreman leaned against the office door. Schedules change. Daniel glanced at Claire, who had just arrived with coffee in one hand and the ownership papers tucked under her arm. Can it be moved? She asked. Delivery truck only gets here at 6, the foreman said. Supervisor has to sign. Claire looked uneasy. The company had already been warned about missed inspections on another project, and she could not simply ignore the requirement. Daniel checked his phone. Lily had a school appointment at 5:30, one she had reminded him about all weekend. I can stay until 5, he said. After that, I leave. The foreman smiled without warmth. Then you're choosing. Daniel answered quietly. Yes. The day moved fast. Daniel led the crew through a difficult trim. Installation, corrected a warped doorway before the casing went up, and stopped a younger carpenter from cutting into a hidden electrical line. By 4, the superintendent admitted they were ahead of schedule. But at 4:45, Claire found Daniel washing his hands at the utility sink. If you leave now, they can remove you from the position. I know. Lily's appointment. Can someone else take her? Daniel dried his hands slowly. Someone else already did once. Claire heard something in that answer she did not understand. Daniel, I'm trying to protect what you earned. He met her eyes. So am I. At the elementary school, Lily sat outside the counselor's office clutching the small wooden pencil box Daniel had made years earlier. When he arrived, she stood immediately. I thought work might keep you. Not tonight. Inside, the counselor explained that Lily had been offered a place in an advanced middle school program the following year, but transportation and after-school arrangements would require a reliable parent schedule. Lily looked at Daniel instead of the paperwork. I don't have to do it. Daniel slid the form back toward her. Yes, you do. But your new job. My job is supposed to help your future, not shrink it. Across town, the delivery truck arrived at 6:08. The foreman waited exactly 10 minutes, documented Daniel as absent, then submitted the report. By morning, Daniel's supervisory assignment had been revoked. Worse, the report claimed his absence had delayed the project and showed a pattern of unreliability. Claire stared at the document, angry but trapped by her own responsibility to the company. You should have called me, she told Daniel. You knew where I was. That's not the point. It is to Lily. He removed the supervisor badge from his vest and placed it on her desk. No argument. No plea. The foreman appeared behind her. Maybe now we stop pretending skill makes a man dependable. Daniel picked up his toolbox. Claire wanted to defend him, but the old transfer papers in her drawer carried another troubling detail she had finally read. Mercer Millwork had been transferred for $1, with Daniel personally assuming every outstanding obligation. She looked at him. Why would anyone do that? Daniel stopped at the doorway but did not turn around. Because sometimes keeping your child means losing everything else. Then he walked off the site. Outside, Lily waited beside the pickup, holding the old pencil box. As Daniel loaded his tools, the lid slipped open. Inside was a faded hospital wristband with Lily's name on it, and a date matching the exact week Mercer Millwork changed hands. By Wednesday morning, Daniel's toolbox was gone from the site, his temporary badge had been deactivated, and the Finnish crew was already struggling without him. Claire stood in the office holding Lily's faded hospital wristband beside the $1 transfer agreement. The dates matched. So did another document the superintendent found in archive project files. Daniel had sold Mercer Millwork the same week Lily was discharged after months of medical treatment, then personally covered payroll, supplier debt, and employee insurance rather than shut the company down without warning. He had not lost the business because he failed. He had given it up because keeping it would have meant leaving Lily in someone else's care when she needed him most. Claire drove to the trailer park before work. Lily opened the door while Daniel packed lunches at the kitchen counter. Dad doesn't like people feeling sorry for him, she said quietly. Claire looked at Daniel. I'm not here for that. Before she could say more, her phone rang. Problem had developed at the job site. The rebuilt lobby wall was shifting during installation. The foreman insisted Daniel's framing correction had caused it and wanted the entire section torn out. Claire arrived to find workers standing back while the foreman pointed at Daniel's revised drawings. This is what happens when you let a laborer redesign engineered work. The superintendent studied the wall. Something's wrong, but it isn't his layout. Claire called Daniel anyway. He almost refused. Then she said, there are 6 men under that ceiling section. 15 minutes later, Daniel walked through the doors carrying only his tape, square, and flashlight. He did not look at the foreman. He checked the fasteners, followed the load path, then removed one trim panel. Behind it, several support bolts had been installed in different positions from his marked plan. Stop work, he said. The superintendent did not hesitate. Daniel pulled out the original cut sheet he had saved in his truck and compared it with the digital revision history. The timestamps showed his approved layout had been changed after hours from the foreman's login. So had Daniel's schedule. So had the mandatory evening inspection notice. Claire's face went still. You changed both. The foreman tried to argue that he was correcting Daniel's mistakes. Daniel simply pointed to the wall. Then why does your correction remove the support carrying the load? Nobody answered. The regional manager arrived within the hour. With the archived plans, login records, inspection notices, and physical framing in front of him, there was nothing left to debate. The foreman was removed from the project pending investigation, and Daniel's record was cleared. But Daniel still did not ask for his supervisor title back. He helped the crew reinforce the wall, checked every connection, and made sure the young carpenter working beneath it was safe before putting away his tools. Then Lily arrived with Claire, carrying the old Mercer Millwork sign. "You told me good wood shouldn't be wasted," she said. "Maybe good work shouldn't be either." Daniel looked at the sign, then at the men who had once laughed when he left at 4:30. Claire placed the transfer papers beside it. "He didn't abandon his company," she said. "He sold it for $1, took the debt himself, and walked away so he could raise his daughter." The room became completely silent. For several seconds, no one moved. Then the superintendent stepped toward Daniel and held out his hand. Daniel looked at it, then took it. No speech. No applause. Just a firm grip between two men who understood what the truth had cost. The regional manager cleared his throat. "Your supervisory record is restored. And if you want it, the Finnish team position is yours permanently." Daniel glanced at Claire, then toward Lily. "Same hours." The manager nodded. 6 to 4:30. "Anything after that is your choice." Daniel considered the offer carefully. "Then I'll take the work, not the favor." "It isn't a favor," Claire said. "You earned it before any of us knew your story." Daniel gave a small nod. That mattered more than an apology. The foreman never returned to the project. Company records confirmed the schedule changes and altered framing plans, and his employment ended after the investigation. Daniel never asked what happened to him. When Lily asked once, Daniel only said, "People have to live with the choices they make. We have ours to make too." Over the next few weeks, those choices began changing ordinary things. The utility notice disappeared from the kitchen table. Daniel stopped counting every dollar before buying milk. One Friday, Lily placed a carton of orange juice with pulp into the grocery cart and looked at him for permission. Daniel pretended to study the price. "Big financial decision." Lily laughed. "We can afford it." He smiled. "Yeah, kiddo, we can." At work, Daniel did more than supervise. He taught. The young carpenter who had nearly cut into the electrical line learned how to read framing before touching a saw. The apprentice who used to force warped boards learned patience. Daniel never put Mercer Millwork back on a building sign, but the old wooden sign found another purpose. He sanded it clean, cut away the damaged edge, and mounted it above a small workbench beside the trailer. Lily painted one new word beneath the faded lettering: home. Claire did not try to rescue them from that home. Instead, she helped Daniel find what he actually wanted. A lease on a modest two-bedroom house closer to Lily's school, affordable on his new salary and near enough that he could still make every pickup, meeting, and school event. She brought him the listing, then left the decision with him. "No strings," she said. "There never should have been." Daniel read every page before signing. Lily chose the bedroom with the smaller closet because its window faced a maple tree. Daniel built her a real desk from the same salvaged boards Claire had once watched him carry away after work. On the first evening, there, Lily set her old wooden pencil box on top of it. The faded hospital wristband remained inside, but she closed the lid gently. "Do we still need to keep that?" Daniel asked. Lily thought for a moment. "Maybe. Just not where I have to see it every day." Claire stood in the doorway carrying 3 takeout containers from the diner near the job site. She hesitated. Daniel noticed. "You staying?" Claire smiled. "If I'm invited." Lily pulled out the 3rd chair before Daniel could answer. Nothing about it felt dramatic. That was why it felt real. A few months later, Daniel's faded Ford pickup still had the cracked dashboard, but it sat each afternoon in the elementary school pickup line at 4:28. Claire sometimes waited beside him. Sometimes she did not. There was no rush to name what was growing between them. Trust had taken time, and they respected it enough to let it keep taking time. One afternoon, Lily climbed into the truck carrying another cardboard house from school. She placed it carefully between them and pointed to the tiny support beneath the roof. "Remember what you told me?" Daniel smiled. "That the parts doing the most work aren't always the ones people notice." Lily shook her head. "I changed it." She looked at him, safe now in a way she had not been for years. "The strongest part is the one that stays." Daniel looked through the windshield at the little house waiting for them down the road, then started the truck. He had spent years proving that dignity does not need attention, character does not need applause, and sometimes a second chance is simply being allowed to keep the promises that mattered all along.